Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to the Daily Fan Racing live preview show. I am your host, as always, Jason Hamlet, and we are here to break down one of my favorite tracks. I know I feel like I say this all the week, but Homestead. That's right. We are in the home stretch of Homestead. Ryan, I feel so terrible that we only get to talk about this track one time a year, but here we are. Finally, we had to wait, 34 weeks to get here? Homestead, baby. You excited?
Yeah. Homestead's a great one. Such good racing. We had really good racing today, with the Xfinity and Truck Series. It's a style of racing that I personally enjoy. So definitely looking forward to it. I was looking at, I forget who it was. It was Scott Zipadelli's track history in 2017.
What?
I gotta do research, right, for my work. But Scott Zipadelli, who's the crew chief for Corey Hyman, the Truck Series, is fantastic on the 1.5 mile intermediate tracks. And I was looking at this 2017 season, and with Brett Moffitt, they won at Atlanta, the old surface at Atlanta. They won at Chicago, which also had a fairly old surface by that point. They won at Homestead, and those tracks, that racing, I feel like we're actually missing a lot of these days. We really only have Homestead and Darlington. High tire wear, long green flag runs, driver making a difference. Definitely something I really wish we had more of. We lost California, obviously, in the last couple of years. So I'm glad Homestead's here. I don't necessarily want Homestead twice a year, but I would like more of this style of racing, and we just don't have those tracks anymore. So
where else could they go then? I mean, is there any?
It doesn't. Well,
Chicago
still exists. Chicagoland still exists. So hopefully, if they stop running the street race, maybe that comes back. I mean, NASCAR still owns the track. They ran Supercross there last winter. I know they can utilize the facility if they wanted to. So maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, so this is a good time to throw that comment up there by Logan Pearson, because that's the kind of research you get from Ryan Larkin, right? He's digging into 2017 Zipadelli, crew chief. That's just for the Truck Series. So I kind of only imagine what kind of insight and what kind of research he's done. Like he's like UFC watching tapes and shit, probably from like how many races of Homestead have you watched? Cup races.
I don't want to talk about it. But yeah, watch a little bit of footage. I don't watch as much as probably some others, but I'll definitely go through, watch some moments, kind of fast forward through, because for the most part, when you look at like Homestead stats on like when cautions fall, you kind of get a good idea of how the race is playing out. When it's a shit show crash fest, you're just like, okay, whatever, that probably didn't really matter. But Homestead, you can kind of pinpoint when the strategy calls were made, when the cautions fell, and then who took tires, who was good. Like I went and looked up at why Sheldon Creed finished poorly last year in the Xfinity race, and he had decent speed. He was running like 11th, and then got into the wall late, right? Like those type of moments, I go and try to find out, like, okay, why did this driver in particular fall back? But I don't go through and watch all the races because, quite frankly, I have a life. So I usually look to pinpoint certain moments I'm trying to figure out, okay, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And I'm sure at this point next year, I'll be like, how the hell did Austin Hill dominate a race at Homestead, right? Like, I'll go back and try to.
You do a good job at dropping nuggets like that in your article and your content that you put over there at Daily Fan Racing. I know because a lot of times it's NASCAR. A lot of the plays are kind of obvious at times, right? So sometimes I can just know like the right plays by looking, but a lot of times I can look at the good plays and I have to go to Larkin, look at your content, and make sure there's no eggs like that laying there that you can call out and make maybe an obvious play not so good or maybe a not so obvious play call out. So you do a good job at that. So guys, go to Daily Fan Racing, get yourself a membership. Oh, what? I don't know. You got 2. Are you giving away for free now with 2 races left? I don't know how it goes.
No, I got F1 through the end of November, all the way to December. So
I forget about F1.
Still plenty of racing to go, but sign up if you want to reach out to me and ask for a discount, and you're not already a subscriber. Then sure, maybe I can set something up. But yeah, we got 3 cup races, 3 Xfinity, or 2 Xfinity, 2 trucks, and then a full month and a half of F1 left. So still a lot of racing. Hopefully we can, like Logan mentioned, finish off the year well.
Yes. All right. So if you've made it you've found our channel. If this is your first episode that you've made it to, guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. Or if you've been watching us all year and you haven't subscribed yet, like a moron, like I typically do that all the time. I watch stuff and don't subscribe. I'm the worst. Don't be like me. Be better than me. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that comment, because I definitely subscribe to this channel. All right, Larkin, let's go. We talked about its Homestead, right? It's Homestead, another 1.5 mile track, right? We've been talking about 1.5 miles the last time we're here. We've last 2 episodes, right? So how does Homestead differ from Kansas and Las Vegas? And is our DFS approach going to be different or pretty similar to what how we've been focusing the last two episodes?
The biggest thing is going to be tire wear. The tire fall off here is double what you're going to see at those tracks, much more significant than Vegas. Kansas has it to an extent, but not anywhere near as much as Homestead. So tire fall off's the biggest thing. And then they're running the wall too later in the run. So the way these guys will race the tracks a little bit different. Definitely gives me more of like Darlington vibes where they're just ripping the fence.
Rim riding the slide jobs, baby. Woo!
To make speed. But, you know, it's the biggest thing that I think Miami offers, or Homestead. I always call it Miami. I don't know why. But Homestead offers is the ability for a driver and team to kind of hit on a setup, to hit on the long run speed of the car. And it's no longer dependent on, like Vegas was all about pure speed in a lot of respects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can gain track position and kind of hold it through strategy, but pure speed wins out. And it's really about just maximizing your car. Whereas Homestead, you can give up a little bit of speed on the short run if your car's good over the 50, 60 lap runs that you're going to have. So we see that a lot here where guys will get really good finishes because they're just good drivers, good at taking care of their tires, and then they're there at the end. You know, AJ Allmendinger's finished 3rd and 5th here the last 2 years in a Call-It car, and that stands out as one example. You know, Eric Almirola was like 9th here last year. Austin Dillon was 10th. You know, they're just guys that you probably wouldn't necessarily be really pinpointing as great plays or guys that can finish top 10 can get those results. Austin Dillon's a guy that has an incredible track record here, actually.
You just good. I mean, I knew we were going to talk about Austin Dillon today. Like, I knew we were going to talk Austin Dillon love, and we got 8 minutes in, and we were already talking about it. Like, we didn't even in the drivers. Yeah.
Well, it's a really good. He's finished 14th or better in 9 straight races here, right? And you know, he's finished top 10 in 4 of the last 5. And while I'm not necessarily in love with him currently, just because current form is horrific, you can't ignore that track history. And a lot of that's just down to his ability to take care of tires, right? That's in the driver's
similar to like Matt Crafton in the truck race, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. You do read my write-ups.
I told you, see? Yes. See?
But yeah, it's exactly like that where, you know, it's not, you don't have to be elite speed-wise to have enough impact on the race. And so we see a lot of guys have consistent track history here, but then you also see, you know, at the top end, our best of the best are the ones that get the job done here. Larson, Reddick, you know, Hamlin, those are the guys that are going to be fast. Bell, and there's not really any differentiation. You know, you're not going to necessarily be shocked by too many people. It's probably just going to be those guys. So elite teams, you know, Blaney was really good here last year. Elite teams with elite drivers do tend to make their way to the front and get the wins, but you can see those surprise finishes from guys just because they put the full race together. Yeah.
I do feel like you can see guys. I feel like when William Byron won at Homestead, that was almost like kind of like a shock, like when he won there. I don't know.
It shocked me for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that time, like a guy showed up, like, oh crap, you know, and won a race like that. Hasn't done anything there since, I don't think. But yeah, that was all right. Let's I lost my train of thought here.
No, but you're right. It's you don't have to. I mean, it's still a Hendrick car, right? And that was a spring race in the first time with the next gen car. I believe. No, that actually might have been 2021.
No, it was before that. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so that was the last car. But I'm with you. He was not good before that, and he shows up and wins, right? Like sometimes you just got to hit it, and you know, there's guys that can definitely succeed here more than others, and so I
think one of the funnest things that I like about this track, right, is like kind of like how you mentioned with the tire wear, and you see those guys who save their tires, and it's like all of a sudden they start moving forward, and it's like they have a different like level of speed than everybody else, and like it's just so fun to watch. And it's like don't feel terrible if your guy starts falling back in the beginning of a run because it's not over.
It doesn't necessarily matter. Yeah.
We saw the
It doesn't
Sheldon
have the
Creed,
same
I think, early in the Xfinity race, like fall back and come forward. Same with Austin Hill. Like it was so fun watching Austin Hill. Just all of a sudden, like his car would just turn on and just be bam coming through the front.
Yeah,
right?
he was untouchable. He was untouchable today in the long run. So, that's the cool thing about Homestead is you can watch the comers and goers. You can see things. There's plenty of room. The only thing I don't love about Homestead with the Cup car is, again, we talked about this all year, is the fall off is the same for everyone still. Like it's not with the old car, especially with a lot of horsepower. You can measure the fall off in like half a second between drivers. Now it's still only a tenth or two. And, if everyone's running the top, which they will be, it makes it harder to pass still. So that's the only part I don't love versus like this track with 800 horsepower, 850 horsepower was unbelievable. Or with the Xfinity car, which has way less downforce and even, horsepower wise is the horsepower to downforce ratio is way less, there at the Xfinity level. And that's why we see the good racing. We see guys come and go and make more of a difference, honestly, than the Cup side. But Homestead's a really good track for that. The biggest thing, and I know we'll get into it when we're talking about it, is I feel like when I was writing my article that I was saying this guy has the ability to finish top 10 a lot. And it kind of went through like 20 different guys where I was like, this guy could work. This guy could work. And Austin Dillon's a prime example of that. So 30th, and I'm like, that could be a good play, even though I don't really like him. And so many guys have the potential just to deliver. And then we have the fast lap aspect of DraftKings that we have to consider as well, because fresh tires scores fast laps, right? And so we have to consider that with different things, and we'll dive into that because Denny Hamlin's going to get a whole talking to from me when it comes to fresh tires.
So real quick, I know I like to always like put you on the spot and make you rank things, right? So is it Darlington or Homestead? One or two?
Homestead
over Darlington?
I like the aesthetics of Darlington. Darlington Xfinity races are the best races every single year. Darlington Cup is too hard to pass, and I hate that. And Homestead, it's just a little bit better, a little bit more efficient. I also like the feeling of Homestead at the end of the year. Like, the season's wrapping up when you're in Homestead. You feel that, end of the year coming. I don't like that there's two races at Darlington because it's like one race, Southern 500. I'd feel, like you'd build up to that massive event. Now we got two races again. And I don't know, Darlington just right now with the Cup car doesn't have the same cachet, but it's still a great track. Homestead, though, is quintessential racing. High, low, 5 lanes, tire wear, like everything is out there and available. And so it's just a little bit better racing right now.
Okay. And one more question before we get into plays. How much are you leaning into practice speeds today? And if you're leaning into them, like what specifically are you looking at in those practice speeds?
The longer the run, the better. So like 10 lap speed doesn't really matter to me because that's, someone can fire off really good for the first couple laps, chew up their tires, and it looks like a good 10 lap average, but they fall back. Like I think Brad Keselowski was, I could look it up. I should have it up right now. I think he was like second in 10 lap average, but then 9th in 15 lap average. And it's like, okay. Now he settled in and was 9th in 20 lap average as well. But it's just a scenario of like, okay, I don't really know how to gauge that.
You want them going the other way, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather see them like 8th in 10.
Yeah, and inching their way up. Like Chase Briscoe's a guy that looks really bad on 10 lap average. And all of a sudden you start looking at his 20, 25 lap run, and you're like, he showed really good speed 25 laps into that run. And does he have a really good long? And by the way, Chase Briscoe is the guy that won Darlington. You're ripping the fence and really good at taking care of his tires, right? Earlier this year. So it makes me wonder, like, okay, is the 10 lap average just skewed by running really fast in the beginning of the run? That 20, 25 lap average really small sample size versus bigger sample size, right? And so once you get that bigger sample size, you can kind of dial it in, but it can still be really misleading because you look at Kyle Larson, his lap averages look pretty mediocre for Kyle Larson, but he was running the bottom. Like he was running the bottom to the middle of the track. He wasn't running up against the fence. So of course his lap times aren't going to be as good because 20, 25, 30 laps into the run, you're supposed to be up against the fence, keeping momentum up, and he wasn't doing that. So you can get lap time skewed by that. You had It might have been Larson. No, it was Reddick. Reddick ran up behind Cindric, couldn't pass him, and then just backed off for 2 laps to build a gap. And it's like, well, 2 laps in the middle of your 15-lap run can make you look worse. And he still was second in 15-lap average. But you don't know which drivers are necessarily having those type of moments in practice, whether they're trying different lines or trying different things or kind of throwing away laps. And so it can be tricky, but at the end of the day, if Noah Gragson is fastest across the board, all the way 25 lap average, and I know he's really good here because I've seen it in the past, I do take a lot of stock in that. And so I do like 20, 25 lap averages. I think they tell a lot, and not as much in the 10 lap average.
20, 25 lap averages. Okay. And then I feel like we have had, some tire wear races in the past to where we're looking for tire wear, and all of a sudden, we have a caution spree, a bunch of cautions. Like we don't ever get those really long runs. Like where would you think Homestead is as far as chaos standpoint? And do you think that's a possibility to happen? Like to where we could see some chaos? Is that anything that we see at Homestead?
No, we're not going to see many cautions here. I'd be flabbergasted if we saw many cautions here. I think, the biggest way that we would see cautions is someone just randomly losing it, like we've seen on all intermediates where someone just has a moment off of 4 or something, or someone gets up in the wall and kind of spins out. But you look at the 2 next gen races, they have 5 cautions each. 2 of those are going to be stage breaks. Before that, it was 6 cautions in those 2 races. And I believe both of those, I'd have to double check, but I believe both of those had competition cautions because those were set by formulas and everything with that. Before that, it was 3 cautions, 5 cautions, 5 cautions. There's always the possibility in racing for us to get a slew of cautions, but for the most part, no. It's a low variance race. We see super long green flag runs, and that's how we should attack it. The only thing with cautions, the biggest way it could impact things is going to be where they fall in the middle of a run, right? Like if someone loses, has a loose wheel, goes out in the middle of the track and causes a caution in the middle of a pit cycle, that could be a big deal. Or, when we look at the final stage and we think, okay, teams are maybe going to try to split this, and how will they split it? And will certain guys run long? And then how does a caution affect that? Like Denny Hamlin is someone that runs super long, and I'm going to harp on that numerous times in this podcast. But if Denny Hamlin's saving himself, not pushing early in the run, drops a couple of positions, all of a sudden caution comes out, loses a couple more spots on pit road. He's now gone from a 4th place to an 8th place guy. Everyone's then on fresh tires again. He can't take advantage of the fact that he's the best in terms of taking care of his tires in the series. And like, how does a random caution kind of throw a wrinkle into certain strategies or certain drivers' abilities? But aside from that, we should see extremely long green flag runs. We should see green flag pit stops. We should see the strategy that we've come to know around stages play out, where, the first stage, let's say it's 80 laps. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Most of these 400-mile races, it's 80 laps, but they'll come in and pit lap 30, 35, right? And then they'll run to the end of the stage, whereas Denny Hamlin will run longer maybe, or a couple guys will run longer. But for the most part, 35 laps into that runs when the majority of cars come in. That strategy is kind of set in stone right now. If we didn't have stage breaks, it would be wide open. But right now, everyone's kind of tied into how we pit or when they would come in just based off of splitting the stages in half, right? So as long as we don't get a random caution in the middle of those cycles or right before a cycle or right after, everything should be pretty cut and dry. And it really just comes down to how good you can take care of tires. The final stage is when we're going to get maybe a 50 or 60 lap run where guys are going to really have to save their stuff. Early in the race, you can be a little bit more aggressive because okay, 30, 35 laps into this, I'm able to come down and take tires.
Okay. And I think also you get in that last third stage, some guys may split it in 3, some guys may be in half. I'm not sure how they split it up, but typically sometimes you get that. All right, let's start talking about some dominators. Let's talk about plays, man. We're 20 minutes in. We haven't talked about plays yet. I feel like we should probably start with. It's okay. No, we've been doing good. I think we've got a lot of good stuff here, but let's get to some plays here. When I look at the board here, it looks like when I think of guys who can ride the top, ride the rim, right? It's the 3 guys at the top here, right? Larson, Bell, Reddick, and they all are starting at the front of the pack, right? So it's got to be the spot where I feel like we're looking to concentrate for dominators. Is that right? Odo, what'd you do?
Oh my God. I didn't know this was possible. And no, I did not just,
Did you just You got excited talking about the Dominator.
I got excited talking about rim riding. Holy crap. No, I had this little
What
ball.
is it?
I had this little
Oh,
ball
it
that I
busted?
played
Yeah.
with, and it busted. And this stuff is literally, I mean, it is what you think it is. Holy crap. It is all over my foot, all over my chair, all over the carpet. This is an absolute mess. Yeah, rim riding. Holy crap.
Power through this.
Yeah, rim riding. So Larson, Reddick are definitely the two that stand out for everybody, right? Like those are the drivers that are going to be forefront of everyone's mind. Yeah, you're going to watch me clean this thing up. Oh my God. I got to move out of this place in 3 weeks. I can't have this carpet all jacked up.
There goes that deposit.
Dude, it is so sticky too. What in the world?
Like, what were you? How hard were you squeezing that ball? Was it like I said, like Kyle Larson, Reddick, Christopher Brown? Oh, I gotta squeeze it so hard.
You should see my floor right now. It looks exactly like Andre the Giant just went. Anyways, oh my God.
Okay.
Thank you, Logan. That is
he really likes Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, so that's really the biggest thing is there is extra speed to be had by being able to rip the fence. And Larson's the best at it. Reddick's fantastic at it as well. There's other drivers who are really, really good at it. Being able to do that efficiently is what gives you that elite speed and the ability to dominate. It also doesn't help if you're Kyle Larson that you have the best car, right, that you're driving for Hendrick Motorsports. That's also been a big benefit. Or Tyler Reddick, who's got, essentially, JGR knows, but, the Toyota program on intermediates is fantastic as well. So they got really fast cars and the ability to rip that fence. But they're also really good at handling tires that wear out. They're very good at driving a car that's sideways, right? So once those tires start wearing, they're able to maintain speed because they can handle, the tire wear a little bit better, which is a big benefit to them. But you also see drivers who are really good on a long run, like Denny Hamlin, have really good results here. Or William Byron, winning that race or getting, I think he had a 4th place finish. Damn. Wrong podcast. Beard. Wrong podcast. That's a whole different guy.
Yeah, it is.
He's an IndyCar driver who may or may not be loved by another NASCAR tout. That's all I'll say. But yeah, I mean, it's really going to come down to, how efficient can those two guys, and they're going to be a major factor, right? Like,
so Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick 1-2 for you.
Yes. I think Larson's 1. I think when you look at Tyler Reddick, he does this a lot, and these tracks I'm about to list are not going to be identical or even necessarily correlate here, but you look at Pocono, Reddick looked amazing in practice and qualifying, and then in the race he underwhelmed. Went to Indianapolis next week, looked amazing in practice and qualifying, sat on the pole, and he was decent in the race, but he wasn't elite. He didn't dominate the race. All of a sudden, other guys like Blaney and Logano were factoring in and all that. We see this a lot with Reddick, even last week at Vegas, and he got the lead for a little bit, and maybe he was going to drive back up there, but he didn't go out there and stomp Bell. He was just equal to Bell. He's either been equal to these top guys or slightly slower. Darlington, I don't know if he was shitting his pants or puking or nerves or whatever Darlington was, but we went into that race thinking, okay, Tyler Reddick, who nearly won in the spring, who's really good in practice, he just shit the bed, literally and figuratively, was off the race. And we see that a lot from Tyler, right? And so it's hard to trust him when you look at his finishes, you look at the results, you look at the lack of dominator points to really just assume that he's going to go out of his way and dominate here. Now, on the flip side of that, he is really good here. He does have a great track record, both at Xfinity and Cup level, and he's sitting on the pole. So you have to play this as a dominator play. You have to respect the upside. But he's now got to go head-to-head with Kyle Larson, and Kyle Larson has matched here in the past. And so that's a difficult aspect. And then the other aspect that's tricky is we can get drawn into a driver like Reddick, and sure, he can maybe get 20, 30 fast laps and lead 50 laps and finish top 5 and score well, but we know fast laps are going to be spread throughout the field, and it's going to be spread throughout the field once these pit cycles start happening. If Reddick pits on lap 35 and Denny Hamlin, I'm going to say this a lot, and I'll get to it in a second why, but if Denny Hamlin pits at lap 45, well, Hamlin's going to have fresher tires and be faster at the back end of that run, right? And every other driver who does that, Michael McDowell does that a lot. Some drivers just run longer, try different strategies, And they take all the fast laps away from those guys, even though they're leading. They don't have to fresh tires, right? And that kind of caps the fast lap ability of everyone on the slate, honestly. And so if Reddick's not leading 80, 100 laps, he could falter. And at 35% ownership or whatever he's probably going to be, that's concerning for me. Whereas Larson, I've seen him lead 240 laps or whatever the hell it was a couple of years ago. That type of upside, we just haven't seen Reddick do it. And enough anyways. He's maybe done it once or twice in his entire career. For the most part, I'm nervous about it. Whereas Larson, I'm like, great. But we also get races like last week where we think that about Larson. We think Larson's going to go in there smash and he's nowhere to be found. Even before the wreck or whatever that issue was where Larson got a lap down, he was never a factor. He was never leading laps. He was never fast. He wasn't turning fast laps. So you never know on any given week with these cars how close they are, who's going to be the guy that separates. And so I like Reddick. You definitely got to play him. I think Larson's more of the cash play just because people are going to be heavier on him and everything. But don't be shocked if Reddick just kind of is there but doesn't reach the upside you need.
Yeah, I do think it's a good point to call out that that tire strategy and somebody coming out late that can, impact the score of a guy like a Reddick who could run second or third in a normal track. Like he might be scooping up fast laps at that point, right? But since he's got somebody out there on fresher tires he don't get those fast laps from second, third, or fourth, right? So yeah, definitely got to kind of be the guy that leads, right, to really scoop up all those fast laps. And just to kind of put a bow on this here, right, we like Kyle Larson, we like Kyle Reddick, both top two guys here. Kyle Larson has only been optimal in 1 of 5 Homestead races, and Reddick, he's been optimal in 2 of the last 4, but he has not been optimal in the next gen era, right? So there is some caveats there. And and Christopher Bell here, I mean, it's hard to put him, it's hard to not see him as 1C as well, right? With Christopher Bell, we saw how fast he was just last week at Las Vegas. I know it's not correlation, but still intermediate, fastest car. We've seen him have the fastest car a lot at intermediates. He just won this race last year, right? Yep. And I can see it. I mean, Reddick's got to compete with him as well. So, I mean, do you think Bell is 3, or is there somebody who you would think we might talk about later who might be above Bell?
So I think you really hit the nail on the head there. Larson and Reddick feel on a pedestal almost above everyone, right? And then Bell's just kind of sitting there. Starting third, fast car, won here last year, very fast last week. And it just feels like, man, are we really going to do this thing with Bell again where he sees 10, 15% less than those guys in terms of ownership? I don't love the play because I don't think mentally that Bell's actually going to do it. But that's the thing with Bell. I almost never really feel like Bell on the intermediate is going to go out there and kick Larson's ass, right? That's always the issue, the trap we fall into. But he's a really good pivot off those guys. I do like Hamlin more than him.
Ooh.
But
Hamlin, you mentioned him 17 times.
But
finish your thought on Bell.
But Bell is right there. I mean, I put in my article, I do dominators and then secondary dominators, and usually I have 6, 7, 8 guys listed. I have 5 guys this week. 5. To me, it's a tight pool. It's an obvious 5. Now, I'm not accounting for, Brad Keselowski starting 18th and driving to the front or something. I'm not accounting for just randomness happening where someone just elite say Blaney starts 20th and goes to the front. I'm not calling him a dominator. He starts 20th. He's a place differential play. And if he happens to leave, amazing. But, in terms of pure must dominate to be optimal, must factor, there's 5 guys. Bell's one of those 5. And I don't really think anyone else is a true challenger. I don't think Stenhouse or Gibbs or Bowman or all those guys that kind of start in that range, Bubba Wallace, are realistically going to outdrive Larson, Reddick, or Bell or Hamlin. So at the end of the day, it feels like a tight core, and you should get proper exposure to Bell.
Yeah, I mean, you really concentrate on, like you said, those guys at the top. I mean, I think, you can pretty much lock in to feel like your dominator points, or at least you play those guys who would have some massive share of it. I mean, there is always a chance that somebody from the back could show up and then, drive the way to the front. Who knows, right? Could be anything.
Like Austin Hill?
Right. But you're probably playing that guy anyway because he could be a position differential player, right?
I think the biggest thing for me comes down to how do you want to build your lineups? You got Byron, you got Blaney, you got Logano that are obvious, higher price guys that offer place differential, but there's also mid-range guys that offer place differential that could work. And do you want to play one or two dominator lineups, or do you want to play more well-rounded lineup? Because Larson smashed last year, but he put it in the pit wall barrier, right? Like he didn't actually get to finish. And then when you look outside of him, it was Blaney and Bell, and they finished 1-2, but they weren't like heading into that race like obvious smash dominators. They started 13th and 10th. That Bell was 16th in the middle of the race. Like it wasn't like these guys were obvious plays, but those were the two you needed. Tyler Reddick started third, had 7 fast laps the entire race, finished third, and wasn't even really a factor. And so
Homestead, it really isn't a race about where you start, right?
It can be, a guy coming from impact. Like my question is, should we value those place differential plays more? Like, someone will lead 100 and some laps probably. Like most likely somebody will do it. So you want that one guy, unless they wreck out like Larson did. But from there, do you want to take advantage of the fact that William Byron offers a lot of place differential, or Blaney does as well? And do we necessarily need to force in lineups that have Reddick and Larson, or Reddick and Bell, or how should we build it? Should we be 2 top-tier DOMs, or should it be a 1 DOM and some place differential? And how should we play that? Should we pay down for 2 cheap values, or should we play 1 and then really play in the middle of the field with guys like Busher or Suarez or Gregson, who start 16th, but you looked really good in practice? Like, there's ways you can go here that I think, because fast laps aren't necessarily one driver and they do get spread out a little bit, that maybe you can just go place differential over trying to force feed in dominators. Because, Larson had 38 fast laps and he dominated the first 2/3 of that race. Bell won. He had 16 fast laps. Blaney second, 22 fast laps. These aren't like huge 40, 50 fast lap performances, right? So that total of 16 or 22 can be offset by place differential pretty easily from a Byron and whatnot. So that's the lineup construction thought I think that has to be had going into it, especially if we do get a late caution and we do kind of shake things up, or if one of the main guys who do collect fast laps gets taken out. That's the other thing.
Where are you going somewhere?
I want to go to Denny Hamlin finally.
Let's go to Denny Hamlin.
I know you mentioned it, and I kind of got off track. Denny Hamlin does this thing, and it's a bit annoying, but it's also really smart of him. And what it is he runs exceptionally long on every single high tire wear track. So if it's an 80-lap, first stint, and everyone kind of comes in lap 35, he runs lap 45. He runs a lap 46, 47. One, because his fall off isn't as much. Like he 40 laps in the run, his fall off is not as egregious as everyone else's. That's him taking care of the tires. But what happens is, for the next 40 laps, he is half a second faster than everybody, and it continues because he doesn't have that much fall off the entire 40 laps. So he's making up 20 seconds over those 40 laps when he only gave up 18 on the front end, right? By pitting 10 laps later. So he has this 2 to 5 second net gain by doing this that almost nobody else can really do. No one else is really capable of doing this at a high level because they can't take care of their tires enough and they can't maintain that speed that deep into the run. What Denny Hamlin accomplishes when he does this is eating up fast laps. And he's probably a top 5 guy regardless of how he runs this race. He certainly was last year, but he scored 44 fast laps in this race last year, which was the most of anybody. And he does this by running long. If you go look at, Richmond races and Darlington races, this is a strategy that they employ every single time out. And when we're talking about the fact that Bell only had 16 and Blaney only had 22, but then Denny Hamlin had double that number, and he was running around those guys the entire race. Like Blaney and Hamlin were going at it right before Hamlin lost power steering and went into the wall, right? Double the fast laps out of that guy. And if he doesn't crash out, he's the optimal play of the slate. So the reason I really like Hamlin is not necessarily because I think he goes up there and beats Larson or beats Reddick and wins the race, even though I do think he can do that. It's more so about the fact that their strategy has put them in the place for DFS point scoring that nobody else is taking advantage of. And until someone challenges that or matches it or runs along with him, and he stops getting these 40 or 50 fast laps that realistically he probably doesn't deserve. Until that changes, I want to factor that into my decision making and play him as a result. Even if I don't necessarily think he's better than Larson and Reddick, I still think he can match them points wise, and he's cheaper. So it's something to consider, anyways.
I think it's a great call, to be honest. I think when you put it like that, I think it's definitely a good angle, and I like that. Where do you think Hamlin's ownership falls this week in comparison with like the Larson Bell Reddick?
He'll be half of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, you even got Byron Blaney there as well. I mean, people are stacking 2. They're probably stacking 2 over 10, I would imagine.
Dude, you got 2 really strong dominators and 2 really strong place differential plays, not even factoring in Bell. I really think Hamlin's going to be odd man out, especially at this track, because people are going to be like, oh, Larson and Reddick ripped the wall. And they just ignore this from Denny Hamlin when, quite frankly, he's done it every time out. And by the way, he's been a top 5 guy here very frequently, right? Like, it's not a surprise to see Denny Hamlin do well here. I think he's a very good contrarian play.
Yeah.
He had 47 fast laps at Darlington earlier this year. 47.
Yeah,
most of the race.
Sense. Yeah,
it's a common theme with him. And when we get to that final stage and he's running 20 laps longer than everyone and we're shaking our head at it, and then he puts on tires and just rips off 20 fast laps, we're going to like, damn, and he's running top 5. So I really like the play. I
already really liked Bell, coming into this week as a potential dominator, and now that you spin me with Hamlin, like I already know I'm gonna be probably under on Larson and Reddick only because because I could see a scenario where both Hamlin and Bell are in the optimal, and the 2 Larson and Reddick, everybody else is gonna be on is not, right? And then I don't know, I can just see that playing out that way. Cool. Who do you we love Hamlin there. So it's Larson, Reddick, Hamlin, Bell. Yeah, okay. I like that ranking there as your 4 dominators there. Let's talk Byron and Blaney quickly. I know they're the obvious PD plays here, right? Do you how would you rank those guys? They finished 2nd and 4th here last year, so obviously a ton of upside. Is there a guy you like better of the 2?
I like Byron better. You just look at kind of the last couple of years, he's been really strong. He got that win a couple of years ago. Offers more place differential, so 5 more spots. So if we look at them straight up, he just offers a little bit more place differential equity. But if Blaney's just got a faster car, he can rip off more fast laps maybe. It could just come down to one of them finishing 3rd and one of them finishing 8th. Or maybe they both finish 8th and 9th, and they aren't really elite scores for the price, right? Their viability is going to come down to how far up do they get and how many fast laps do they get. If they're 10th place finishers, it's a good score. It's not great. We can obviously see a dominator supersede that. But if Byron's finishing 5th with 20 plus place differential points, that's 60 points without even talking about any fast laps he captured throughout the race. So, it really comes down to how far through the field do they get? Can they reach their top 5 upside, which, I do believe both of them can. And then from there, like how many fast laps, how does that equate versus, Hamlin, Bell, Reddick, and Larson? Is 65 enough for like the 2nd highest score in your lineup? And is one of those drivers doing it?
Yeah. And also, like you said, their price is a little bit, up there over 10K. And I think there is some, a little bit more value in the PD range that we're going to talk about as we move down this list. So making that decision is really going to, determine how your roster, plays out. If you want to go down to those mid-range guys or you want to pay up, for those top guys. But I think Hamlin may be the key that gets you to playing that higher price PD guys. So
yeah, and then Logano, we should probably talk about Logano in the same breath.
Yeah.
He's the same type play, but the issue with Logano is like when I think of Byron's upside, it's like 4th. Blaney's upside is 4th. Logano's, it feels like it's 9th, right? And so just in terms of what he does on like a consistent basis, when we see this throughout the entire year where everyone's bitching about him being like 15th in standings and like he's good. He's a solid driver, but the upside with Blaney and Byron just seems bigger. Byron's finished top 5, like 4 straight weeks or whatever it is now. Logano has that win that was really impressive on field mileage, but it was on field mileage, right? We don't think Logano right now is the guy that's going out there and contending for top 5s and wins on pure pace, but he's $1,000 cheaper. He offers the same place patrol. And if Byron and Blaney are just 10th place cars and Logano is also just a 10th place car, there's some value there in paying down and building a better lineup elsewhere, being able to fill it out with maybe a better play. So I do like Logano as a pivot off of those two. And I think he can finish top 10. I don't know if it's going to be like at a super high rate. You look at him historically, he's good, not great, at least in the next gen era, the last few years. He was great with more horsepower, but 8th and 18th with next gen, that's kind of what I expect. He's either going to finish like right on the fringe of the top 10 or he's going to finish like 17th and kind of underwhelmed. But either way, you're still going to get like 30, 35 points. And then the upside is probably 50, 55.
Yeah, I do want to throw in here that all three Penske drivers, they were optimal in this race here last year. So there is, those four showed up. Penske team shows up late in the year, right? I mean, we talked about it last week, right? That the Penske boys could show up. I know, granted, right? They got their fuel mileage, right? But they seem to find ways late in these races and start in 26. If he finds a way to get up there, that's gonna pay off nice at that price. And last year, like I said, he was optimal. He was started 36th though in that race. He was, and he was. I mean, but he's 10 spots over, and he was 8,500. He's also priced $800 more this week after coming off that win. So yeah, definitely a little thinner value than he was last week. This thing. What's that?
We're 40 minutes in. That's crazy. Probably need to move along.
We are. We're good.
That's my fault. I just didn't. I drank one alcoholic beverage. I bust one ball. And
we were under an hour last week, so we're good.
We got to make up for it.
Yeah. Another PD guy here before we move on, right? Let's talk about Ross Chastain because I think he's in the same. God, I mean, come on, man! Like I think he's in the same category. Again. Listen, man. He was optimal here in 2022 after starting 20th. Right, he finished second. He was 9,600 in that race. He's $800 cheaper and starts 22nd. Like. I mean, tell me why that can't happen. Like, I mean,
it can.
Just won at Kansas.
I don't want it to happen, but it can. If that makes you feel any better. The thing with Ross is the same thing I've battled all year. It's like he's good and then he's not. I don't know when he's going to be good. I don't know when he's randomly going to be a top 5 car. If he's a 12th place car, cool. It's 40 points. It's not enough at 8.8K. If he shows up and is just randomly a top 5 car again, like he's done, at Kansas or whatever, he started 20th and won at Kansas, right? Like if that happens, I don't really know what to say. It's not expected. Like I want to put my money on it right now that he's going to finish top 5, but he always has that in him. So to an extent, yeah, we should be factoring that in a little bit. I definitely think it's a fine play, but it's more of a secondary play. I don't want to talk shit about him because the second I do that, he'll do well. But it's just like it feels really irrelevant. But all of a sudden, it's like it's a guy starting 22nd and he finishes 5th. It's a great play. So if he reaches his upside, if he reaches that 10%, likelihood of hitting his ceiling or whatever, then sure, it could be a really good play. I think for the most part, he finishes like 12th to 15th and isn't quite there, but. That's mainly because we don't see a ton of restarts here, right? Like it's not about track position, not about restarts. It's not about defending. If you're just not good on a long run here, you're not good and it shows. And I think that's one of the reasons why at other tracks he can do really well. And this track, I think he's going to be good, but not great.
Yeah. Okay. I can see.
I spent 3 minutes on Ross Chastain. Talk about expanding a show.
It's all right. We skipped over Chase Elliott, Martin Truex. Do you have any interest in those guys? Martin Truex is a high tire wear guy. Do you care about him this week?
Yeah. So Elliott doesn't really interest me. He's just not been really good here. Truex certainly does from the high tire wear aspect. I really wish I probably could pull it up because I had some information in my write up that would probably be better than whatever I'm rambling about now. But yes, Truex is very, very good on high tire wear tracks, right? Like we know he has that ability to save tires, run long, and do really well. He had a 3rd place finish at Kansas recently. He was decent at Vegas here. So like, even though he's on the back end of his career, we know he's retiring. I typically shy away from those guys. We saw in recent intermediate races that he's getting good finishes still. We know he can get some fast laps on the long green flag run. He's had a good track record here as a result of that, tire wear. And so I do think if I'm picking anyone outside, he was the 5th guy in as my potential dominators, and is certainly a secondary option to the other 4. It's certainly not someone I'm going to invest a lot in, but 9K, I think top 5 is a very realistic outcome, and I think scoring fast laps is a realistic outcome as well. We think about
you have more Martin Truex, Joey Logano, or Ross Chastain.
Logano and Chastain. I will play the place temperature over this type play all day long, but Truex is probably going to be 15% owned. Like, you don't have to be super heavy on this play. You can match the field, and if he does smash, if he does pull it out, then you're only battling a small portion of the field, and hopefully you've built right with that. I'm not recommending going overweight on this play by any means, but I think if you visualize how it works, I think there's a clear path for him.
All right. Move on a little bit down the line here. We're into the 8,600 territory here. Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Ty Gibbs, Alex Bowman, mid-range guys starting middle of the pack. Brad Keselowski's guy stands out to me as a tire wear guy, as the guy I should be looking at. Is that same feeling for you, or is there somebody else I should be looking at?
I want to expand this group all the way down to Gragson.
Whatever you got to do, man.
Yeah, thanks. It's my show, right?
Your show. I just host it.
No,
your boat. I just steer it.
I want to do that because this is the group I was talking about in the beginning of the show where I said it feels like anyone can finish top 10. It feels like there's so many guys that if Gibbs finished top 10 again, like he did last year, would it surprise you? Would Bubba Wallace surprise you? Would Bowman surprise you? Like, all these guys. What's that?
Bubba would surprise me.
He finished top 10 here last year.
I know, but this year.
But, dude, Bubba Wallace is.
You just told me you couldn't trust Bubba like last week. You just told me this.
He finished 12th last week.
I know, but you told me like we couldn't trust him or something. Like you were like, I don't know what's going on.
I don't trust him personally.
I know, but now it's like, nah, Bubba.
I still don't trust him. But if Bubba Wallace finished 8th, that would not surprise me either. Buescher certainly offers place differential. Briscoe and Gragson, both we talked about them in the beginning, or at least I did, where I kind of liked what I saw from them in practice. If any of these guys finish 6th, 7th, I wouldn't be really surprised. And then at that point, it's like, okay, not all of them can do that. Some of these guys are going to have to finish 15th, right? So, yeah, 2 of these guys, I think, have a really, really good shot because of the pricing to round out lineups. 2 dominators, 2 value plays, and then in the middle, I think 2 of these guys can be really, really good. Keselowski, you're right, good long run speed, has shown really good intermediate results. The issue is his recent. I mean, you look at the past 2 months; it's dog shit. He's finished 22nd or worse in 5 of the last 6 races. It hasn't been great for Keselowski lately. Gibbs is very hit or miss. Bowman starts a little too high. Wallace starts a little too high. Buescher offers a ton of place differential, but you're talking about 30-35% ownership on that play, just like it was last week when he started in this range. So it's like, do you want to battle the ownership, or is he just going to be the best play? Or can you play someone like Briscoe and Gragson, Gragson specifically, who I think can realistically finish top 10, do it with some fast laps, and maybe outscore everyone above them. And so this is a wide range. I think Wallace and Bowman, you can they're extreme, so you can potentially get away from them. But Keselowski and Buescher are the known entities with good upside. Gibbs has been strong on intermediates and was good here last year, so I could see him finishing 8th with some fast laps. And then you got some riskier tournament plays in Briscoe and Gragson, who, Stewart Haas shutting down. Gregson's a wild card in general, but we've also seen top 10s from him. I know he's fantastic here at Homestead. And so do one of those guys strike, score 50 points at 7,400, 7,500, and round out a lineup. So I think this whole range is
play in that group.
What's that?
Who's your favorite play in that group?
Gragson,
okay.
I'm gonna trust the practice speed, but I'm also gonna trust the fact that when he was in the Xfinity Series, no one was within 3/10 of him. Like, he was so far better than everyone, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. Like, he would just cut through the field, and he never won. He always found a way to screw it up.
Mm-hmm.
I think David Starr put him in the wall with like 10 laps to go or whatever one time, and like just weird stuff happened, right? And he never got the wins, but he was always just lights out, way better than everyone. And so when you see that and you see his practice speed where he's the best in every lap average you can calculate, and he's like, it just feels like a really good tournament play. And so I really want to attack that one. Buescher and Keselowski feel like safe options. And then Briscoe's kind of that, like, hey, I'm going to be different here, hopefully get low ownership, and maybe we see that Darlington speed come out.
All right. I love it. Let's move on to, I know you touched on this gentleman earlier in the show, but AJ Allmendinger, he has been optimal in back-to-back Homestead races, started 25th and 10th in those races, priced $7,000 and $7,500 today. He starts all the way in the back at 32nd, price $7,300. Is he just a smash play today?
Dude, it's so obvious that everyone's going to be on him. He was really good in the Xfinity race earlier today. He's obviously good at this track. It's hard not to play it. It's really hard not to play it. I really don't have anything negative to say. The only thing I'll say is he's going to be chalked. Everyone's going to be on this play. Everyone's going to be aware of it. Austin Cindric starts 36 and can do the same thing.
Yeah, he's the pivot.
Maybe not sideways. Austin Cindric maybe can't finish 5th. I won't say that about him, but he can finish 12th or 15th.
And Dinger could finish 20th and Cindric could finish 12th, right? So,
yeah. So potentially Cindric as a pivot off that play, or both playing both, maybe. We talked about Gregson, we talked about Keselowski or Buescher, but what if those guys only score 45 points and then Cindric and Allmendinger score 50 each? You don't necessarily have to play those guys. You can play 2 elite, place for you guys. And Cindric's very sketchy at times. He's definitely not someone I love to trust, but he's got a lot of good finishes lately. He's been pretty solid overall. He had a good finish here last year in this race.
Last year. Yeah, started 26.
So I'm just kind of, he was 12th after starting 26. I really do feel like that's a good play. And so whether you mix and match those guys, you get equal ownership, you leverage it one way or the other, maybe go overweight on Cindric and underweight on Allmendinger just to, screw with ownership on the field, or play them I think they're both really good options. And then Suarez is a good pivot off of those guys. What if one of these guys gets a speeding penalty, ruin the race, get a flat tire at an opportune time, whatever. Maybe they just don't deliver. And Suarez, who's basically been like a 12th place guy here in the past, 12th place guy in practice, 12th place guy. He's just kind of there, finishing 12th, practicing 12th, running 12th, 13th at Kansas. What if Suarez just does that again, scores 40 points? So I don't mind him as a pivot off of those guys. I certainly am not going to focus on him, but that's a fine pivot. It's funny that DraftKings still has him as SS Greenlight Racing driver. That's hilarious. But yeah, I think those 3 are really good place differential options in this mid-range to, one, save salary so you can pay more up top, but also not be forced into playing the riskier tournament options. And quite frankly, those 2 can outscore anyone above them.
Yeah, Suarez was optimal here in 2022, the same race Ross Chastain was. So there's a little thing, right? It seems like we've said that a lot, like when they're both optimal together. So if you're going to play one, maybe play them both together. But in that race, he started 23rd and finished 10th, but he was 8,300 today. He is a lot cheaper, right, at 7,200. So needs a lot to happen with those big guys, with those other guys starting so far back. But yeah, anything's possible, like you said. On down to this 6K range, and this is your boy. So I'll let you kind of take it over here.
Yeah, so I think Hocevar, Barry, and Haley start too far up. I mean, we got a lot of great place differential plays. You just really, I can't justify playing them. If Carson Hocevar finishes 9th, so be it. It's still only 40 points, right? Depending on fast laps. I just don't. And by the way, he has 1 top 10 finish in the past 3 months, and that was a road course. So I don't really think playing 6,900 Hocevar makes a lot of sense. I'd rather chase place differential, which I think has bigger upside. And between Allmendinger, Cindric, Dillon, and some of those guys, I think 1 or 2 of them are going to hit and just outscore Hocevar or Barry or Haley, regardless of kind of what they do. That just seems most likely to happen. Dillon's very interesting. We already talked about him. I don't have to spend a lot of time, but 14th or better in 9 straight. It speaks for itself. Yes, he has been good here. The thing that really worries me is how bad both he and Busch were in practice. That's the only thing. 2024 has been awful in general. And then you look at their practice times, and they are the worst team here. So there's a very real possibility that he just runs 27th.
Dillon did get better late, though, in his run. He was 11th, fastest in the 30
out of how many cars?
Out of 20. So, he's still, I know, but still better than than where I
But
started.
that's what we're looking for, though, right? Like and we don't know who's checking out, but when you look at
21 cars, 21.
When you look at who's faster in the back end of that run, it's Bowman, it's Barry, it's Elliott, it's Hosfar, it's Busch. I mean, it's still good guys. You're right. I just pulled it up. Whereas 20-lap run, before that he was 18th. So actually, that's pretty decent. I don't know what the fuck I was looking at before. Honestly, that's better than what I was looking at. I'm in on Austin Dillon. Let's do it.
Got it. Oh,
I really don't know what
baby.
I was looking at. Maybe I was just looking at Kyle Busch's speed and just being like, okay, that's translating to Austin, because Kyle Busch was like last at 15-lap average or whatnot. So, he was 31st and 15-lap average out of 33 cars, Kyle Busch was. And maybe I was putting that onto Austin Dillon, and that's not fair. That's
not fair. Reject. Kyle Busch is
what is that? That's racist, but literally because RACE racist, not never mind.
I don't know where you're going with that, man.
I drank too much before the show.
You had one beer, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Anybody else here? Eric Jones. You like him at all?
Jones doesn't really have a good track record, but he is a guy that can randomly show up. So fine if you end up on him, but not really.
If you're the guy that likes to gamble.
Anthony asked, I thought he was being serious. He's like, Grease thoughts? I was like, I don't really know much about Grease, if I'm honest, but he meant Ryan Preece.
We'll get to Preece.
We'll get to him in a second. He's a very crucial part as well.
Yeah.
I was like,
what? Well get to Preece, because I mean, do we have anybody else here that you want to talk about? Michael McDowell, Justin Hunter Nemechek. I don't know why I called him Justin Hunter Nemechek, but do you like Justin? Anybody else?
Right? So McDowell fits into that Hamlin mold. He's a guy that runs long at times too, or tries alternate strategies, and that sometimes results in fast laps. Even though he sucks, even though he doesn't necessarily get good finishes, he'll randomly spike for fast laps, and that kind of brings him into the equation. Also, doing that can sometimes result in good finishes, right? Like it can sometimes getting off cycle, the race can just break your way. So I don't necessarily like him, but 6,300. If you don't have the salary to pay up for Austin or Cindric or whatever, yeah, that's fine. Stenhouse is a hard no. Hard fucking no.
He's qualified 5th, man.
Yeah, great. He can beat me. And then Zane Smith is I really wanted to talk about him with the 6K and under guys, but I'm just going to isolate him. Zane Smith has been really, really good recently. It's been kind of quiet, but when you look at his recent races, he is running top 15 a lot. He's getting top 15 finishes. He was 16th last week. He was 10th at Kansas. The intermediate, specifically Spire, have been really, really good. The confidence is there, right? Like 16th at Bristol, 5th at Watkins Glen. The first half of the year sucked for him. It was awful. It was atrocious. And then it just all started clicking. And where he starts 19th, he can finish 13th and score 36 points. And at 6,100, that could be good enough depending on what you're doing with the rest of your lineup. If you can't pay up for Cindric, or you can't pay up for Allmendinger, you can't get to a high place average guy, or maybe you're playing them, but all the place average guys like Preece and Burton and all those guys just failed to deliver. I can see Zane Smith being the highest scorer in this range by finishing like 13th. I don't think he has to be a top 10 guy. When I look at Hosfar at 6,900, starting 15th, I'm like, less place average costs too much. And so all of a sudden it's just a harder window for him, right? Whereas Zane's kind of more of a factor with the cheaper plays, these value plays, and he could be the last guy. And we see this with lineup construction all the time, where the highest guy you can pay from a value tier play is 6,100, and he fits that mold. So I think he's actually a really sneaky contrarian play. And while I will focus on Preece and Burton and some other guys just for floor's sake, Zane's a really good tournament option.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like when I was kind of messing around building lineups today, I kept liking putting Zane Smith there as a value guy, because as I look, I know you're going to talk about these 6K guys. When we look at just Homestead in general, for whatever reason, last five races here, we haven't seen a lot of guys in that below 6K or below be optimal. We've actually had 3 optimal lineups that had no driver priced below 6K in it, and only twice, obviously, had one guy priced below 6K. So for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like those guys below 6K show up here. So who do you like this week?
Yeah, a lot of the reason for that is, when I'm looking at past optimals now is, we got Eric Almirola at 6,300, Austin Dillon at 6,200, Daniel Hemrick at 6,300 in 2019. That's a long time ago, though. Austin Cindric was the guy under 6K, but that's, a Penske car, self-explanatory. We got Almirola and Allmendinger who finished top 10 who are 7K and under. So we had good value plays that were in that 6 to 7K range. And then 2022, Austin Dillon and Allmendinger again were in the 7K range. So we've had a lot of good value plays, guys that we can lean on like Dillon that have delivered. If we don't, which we do again, right? Like that actually adds more weight to Cindric, that adds more weight to Allmendinger, that adds even more weight to Dillon, because we've seen it multiple times. That's been historically what's happened. But let's imagine a world where we need at least one of these guys, just for the sake of argument. Like Larson and Reddick smash, they both dominate. We need to pay up for them. Or because Blaney and Byron offer such good value, maybe we still need to pay up for one of those guys. Priest, Gillen, LaJoie, and Burton are very good for. Like they check all the boxes we look for from these type of plays. They start at the back. They can finish top 20 on a given day. They're cheap. They can save salary. Like they all kind of work. I'm fine with whoever you play. I think Priest is the obvious guy that I'm into. Good finish here last year, relatively qualifies bad every week, and then finishes 18th. Like that's just kind of a common trend for him right now. 32nd to 22nd last week. Kansas was 37th to 16th. On the bad day, it was 34th to the 26th or to 26th at the Roval. So yeah, that was only 24 points, but he's 5,600. What do you expect?
He's been killing me, man. Priest has been freaking killing me. Like I've been refusing to play him because I'm like, he's gonna fucking shit the bed eventually. Like I just can't keep playing him because I know the minute I buy in and be like, okay, I'm gonna play Ryan Priest, I know what's gonna happen. So like I just have to keep riding this ship until he eventually shits the bed because I'm pot committed. I gotta just keep investing in that he's gonna shit the bed. I can't go into it.
So 7 of the last 10 races, he scored over 30 points on DraftKings. He's cleared 40 points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and he has a 35-point finish last week. That's all you're asking for from those type of plays, right? So, and by the way, Barry, Briscoe, Gregson all showed good speed so far this weekend. So you would hope that correlates to him to an extent as well. Burton's the other guy that I'm really interested in out here, and I feel disgusting saying it. But
Harrison Burton, or is his dad coming out of the booth and coming down and racing?
Dude, I don't feel good about it. I certainly don't. But look at last year. Just look at how bad he was last year, and then look at this year. Look at 15th last week. Look at 21st at the Roval. Look at 23rd at Kansas. Look at 24th at Watkins Glen. Look at 21st at Darlington. Look at 14th at Michigan. It's like, okay, I know we've had this perception of him that he is just bad. And it's true. He is bad. But maybe he's good enough for what we need out of someone that's 5,500 this weekend at a track that Penske shows some speed, right? Like it's a Penske car. It is called what it is. And so I would not be shocked to see him finish 25th. Now, is that elite? No, but that's, 24, 25 points or whatever. And then if the race breaks his way, all of a sudden that's a 20th place finish and he's close to 38 points or whatever that is. And for 5,500 to round out a lineup, to save salary, to pay up for multiple dominators, to pay up for certain drivers that just smash. And if you don't need to play him because you have the salary, then don't. But if you need the salary in certain bills, I think it makes a lot of sense. And so Burton's a driver that I'm actually going to be somewhat pretty interested in when it makes sense salary-wise. I do think he's probably just going to suck and finish 27th, but oh well, I got 20 points. And then if he reaches that upside, it could be really, really good. The other guy, what?
I was going to say, I had a lineup that I built earlier that I ended up landing on Harrison Burton. It was like, I ain't fucking building this lineup, and deleted it. So I might go back and rebuild it now with that insight of Harrison Burton. Were you going to talk about Daniel Hemrick? Are you going to love Daniel Hemrick? Is that what you want to say?
I'm going to talk about Corey LaJoy.
He's starting inside the top 10.
Can I talk about Corey LaJoy?
AJ Almond. Okay. I can't even.
I want to talk about Corey LaJoy.
Go ahead. Talk about Corey.
I want to talk about Corey LaJoy. So there's this weird thing where people get off on Twitter talking shit about Corey LaJoy, and I don't really get it. He's got 5 top 15 finishes in his last 8 races. He was 14th last week in a Rick Ware racing car. When Justin Haley does that, we blow our load. But when Corey LaJoy does it, no one fucking says anything. I'm not saying
I've never once blown my load over Justin Haley.
Dude. They put it like, did you not see Twitter where they're talking about how Rick Hendrick's going out of his way to hire Justin Haley and put him in the Spire car? Like, people are legitimately going crazy over Justin Haley, like, because of the way he did in a Rick Ware racing car. And then Corey LaJoy finishes 14th. Okay. Corey LaJoy is not as bad as people think. They're wrong. Okay. He's not great. He's not going to be like an elite driver. He makes a lot of dumb mistakes. That happens. 9th at Darlington, 15th at Kansas, got out of that car, 14th at Rick Ware racing car at Vegas. His upside is decent for a guy that's 5,700 starting 33rd. Now, he may just run 30th because it's a Rick Ware racing car, but that's a Rick Ware racing car with an alliance with RFK that occasionally shows up. And so I think LaJoy is also a viable play. He's going to have like 4% ownership. And if he shows up in the top 20 again and looks great, then you're going to wish you had him. So realistically, LaJoy and Burton should finish 27th. It's the type of race, it's the type of racetrack and all that. But to save salary, to get 20 points, but then maybe have 35-point upside, they are worth a look.
Yeah, I did not realize Corey LaJoy has had that impressive of finishes over the last 8 races.
And he's not a great driver. I'm not even trying to argue that fact, but I do want to kind of talk about the fact that he finished 20th here last year. It's just when you have a guy like that who just gets beat up in like the public view and people just stop playing him. And they come in at 3% ownership, and all of a sudden their results are really solid, and they're clicking off good finishes. And I feel like I want to target them just for the sake that, hey, he's 4% owned, and that to me, and the fact that he could be just as good as Priest, anyways, in this range, is worth a look, in my opinion. And I don't love him. I'm not saying he's a great play, but you know.
Is it Priest, Burton, LaJoy for you? Is that how you rank them? Or
yes. Yeah.
And Gilliland behind all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. All right. Anybody else you want to talk about there, or are you good?
Good Chad Fincham. He's good now. I'm good.
We've been there 20 minutes talking about Chad Fincham, or we want to wrap it up and move it on.
Let's
go, man. We got one more of these left. Let's wrap this thing up. All right. You guys, if you guys are new to the show, we like to wrap things up with what we like to call the Core 4 more. So Larkin is going to round up the show, make some stands, give some plays, and he's going to start it off with his Core 4 plays we can build our lineups around, right? That we know some combination of these 4 are going to be optimal in today's race.
I hope so. So my Core 4 are Larson. Wow, that I feel like I'm slurring my words a little bit. Larson, Byron, Allmendinger, and Cindric.
All right, we got some P. We see we're leaning PD here. 3 PD plays, 1 Dom in the Core 4 there. All right, let's. There is a lot of position differential, I feel like, on this slate. I mean, some guys who are going to get there. Let's go with Core 4 guys that we need to stay away from this week. They're going to be duds, right?
Yeah, like Joe Logano last week.
He was not Logano last week, was he?
Well, he was, right, until he was like, I'm just not going to pit. Y'all do that thing. Y'all can pit. I'm just going to run around. Chase Elliott, don't really want any part of that. I'm not super interested in it. Bubba Wallace starts too high for me. Josh Berry is not someone I think is really even worth looking at. I'm not going to be cheap and play and say Stenhouse or anything like that because that's just cheating. But I'll throw out Hocevar because I think it's edgy enough that it can make me look stupid. So
I think you're probably safe with that one. I think the only one here that I feel like could make you look stupid. I feel like Elliott is the only one that could show up and win just because he's a Hendrick car. I don't think any of the ones are going to two balls. All right, let's go. 4 more. These are 4 plays who, just 4 more plays, man. They could be leverage plays. Just 4 more. Like 4 is not enough, right? We need to play 6. So give us 4 more.
Denny Hamlin. I think I covered hopefully that about as well as I can.
Yeah, Hamlin's a great play.
Noah Gragson. I believe it. I believe it's true. Definitely risky.
No, Gragson. Come on, that was good.
What was that?
Noah. Gragson.
Ryan Preece.
I don't know. It's late.
Please stop.
Ryan Preece.
Please stop. And then Ryan Blaney, who's kind of like the pivot off of the chalkier Byron play.
Okay.
I don't even know if he'll be chalkier, honestly. That's probably not. But the safer play, in my opinion, is Byron. And the guy.
It's curious to see what the field goes with. I guess you got to kind of see what the optimizers are spitting out, right? If the
Byron's been so good lately. I do believe 4 straight top 4 finishes. I think he's going to get a lot of attention, but it could come down to a $300 difference in salary that Blaney just shows up a little bit more.
He'll probably project. Yeah, you're probably right. They'll probably both project pretty high. And Byron will probably project second highest over Larson. So I'm sure it'll be Larson. Byron will be a lot of what gets jammed in there. So. Who knows, though? I haven't punched an optimizer all year, so I don't even know what those things do anymore. So, just guessing at this point. Mm-hmm. All right, I guess we got to wrap the show up. We are down to the home stretch at Homestead. I wish we were keeping track of how many you've picked right this year, race winners. Then I'd be able to give that update. But I'm guessing maybe 6, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Somewhere between 4 and 6.
We've only done 18 races. We've only done half. So
we had a good stretch in the beginning of the year where it was Larson and Hamlin, and I hit 4 of them. But it hasn't been as good lately because, there's just been some random winners. Austin Dillon, Harrison Burton. We've had this stretch, Chase Briscoe, of just winners that no one would pick, right? So I don't think that's what happens today or in this race. I think we'll have at least a couple obvious plays. I'm gonna go the obvious chalk route and say Kyle Larson.
Larson, yeah.
I just it's hard to imagine a race where he's not winning here. But if it's gonna be someone random, it's gonna be someone different than Hamlin. I think Hamlin could be a surprise factor in this race. Surprise in the sense that we know he's gonna be good, but would anyone really pick him over Larson and Reddick right now? Probably not.
Okay, I like it. Larson, lock in the favorite, guys. I think you set us up pretty good. We'll roll with Larson, Byron, Dinger, Cindric as the core. Stay away from Elliott, Wallace, Barry, Hocevar. Sprinkle in your Hamlin, Gragson, Preece, Blaney, and I think that's a recipe for some success here. Larson will be the winner. I got one more question for you before we get out of here. So we got the chase, right? Who do you think is going to be in must-win territory after this race? Who's in trouble coming out of Homestead?
Ooh, I gotta look up where we even are. There's a pretty big gap in the standings, isn't there, right now? Yeah, Byron's 4th, and he's got 27 points on Hamlin in 5th. This is a good spot for Hamlin to get some stage points and close that gap. Logano's obviously advanced. Bell and Larson can get a lot of stage points here early as well. They have a good gap. They're all kind of in must-win situations. Reddick especially. Reddick's not good at Martinsville. Reddick will not – if he does not win this week, I don't think he's getting the job done. Hamlin, really good at Martinsville, obviously, right? Blaney, really strong at Martinsville. Even, HMS has been good there. obviously, so even Larson and Byron, if they needed to, can show up at Martinsville and do well. This is Reddick's must win.
Yeah.
He has to win this race. There is no other avenue for him, which is kind of why I think he may lay down a little bit.
Yeah. So you think Reddick is in trouble out of this race after this race, and probably you think Larson wins, Reddick don't win, he can't race in Martinsville, so he's pretty much done.
Yeah, I mean, Bell, Larson, Byron, Hamlin, those are like four of the, and Blaney, those are like the 5 best at Martinsville right now. I mean, 5 of the top 6 or 7 for sure.
Yeah.
So it's really, really hard to imagine a world. And Tyler Reddick's not good at Martinsville. He is not good there. So this is a must. It's not a must win because he can go win the first 2 stages. Maybe one of these guys ahead of him crash out this week, and one of them crash out next week, and maybe it falls into his lap. But if these guys don't have issues, he has to win this race. So must win.
Maybe somebody's car weighs too much or something. Maybe 3 of them. Maybe 3 cars.
Yeah. And then Hamlin can potentially make up points both here and next week on Byron to close that gap. Byron starting 25th. Maybe he gets no points in stage 1, or maybe only gets 1 or 2. Hamlin clicks off 6, 7, 8. All of a sudden he closes that gap to 20 points, outscores them. And the second stage outscores them by finishing ahead in the race. All of a sudden it's a 12-point gap going to Martinsville where Denny Hamlin can dominate. So Hamlin's realistically the only guy I think has a points chance of advancing. Blaney, Elliott must win at Martinsville where they both can get it done. So I do think going into that race, we'll have 4 or 5 guys that are kind of in must-win situations throughout the next 2 races, but especially Martinsville. I think we'll have 4 or 5 guys that, once Elliott, Blaney, and Hamlin start going for that win, it's going to force Byron and Larson to have to go up there and challenge them. So, or even Bell. I mean, Bell could slip a little bit and all of a sudden be in that mix. So Martinsville is going to be fun from a must-win scenario. And because there's no tire wear, because track positions and everything, we can see strategies shake that up and really flip the race and whatnot. So I'm tired of the playoffs. I don't want it, but if it's what we're dealing with, then let's enjoy it for what it is and see if someone pulls it off next week.
Yeah, I think you got to enjoy it while you're in it because it ain't going away, man. You got to accept it. Enjoy the moments that it gives us because it does give you some fun moments. It definitely steals some stuff from us through the year. But
yes, Logan, I will do a giveaway for Phoenix. I will give you 3 months of no Jason and no Ryan. That is my gift to you guys for Phoenix.
Could be longer.
No. You're coming back, Jason. But,
all right.
let's get out of here.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for doing it. As always, Larkin, you guys can find him over at Daily Fan Racing. Get a subscription, all that good stuff. Go ahead and subscribe if you made it this far and you haven't done so yet. Until Phoenix, we will wrap this season up. It's been awesome, guys. We will see you at Phoenix.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Peace.